Alright, folks, this is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review a Southern hip hop album, and that would be Boys in the Hood. Now, that is by the rap group Boys in the Hood that came out of ATL in the summer of 2005, and that consists of four members, which is Jody Breeze, Big Gee, Big Duke, and then Young Jeezy, who wound up having a solo career. Basically, this group dropped a couple albums, but they only managed to really get like two or three singles that were really in regulation. I think probably around Atlanta and Florida and those type places down south, there might have been a few more. But for the most part, especially around the parts of the country that I'm from, the only song that really got spins was just the first single, Dem Boys. Now, Young Jeezy, he did like double duty with this by not only dropping an album with his group Boys in the Hood, but he put out an album the very next month with the Thug Motivation 101 project. And that was massive. That got more singles than this project did. And it was clear, and it is clear when you listen to this project, that Jeezy is the most breakout star on the project. I like the rest of the members. They all have like their personality types. Like Jody Breeze is kind of the young buck, and that shows in a number of songs like Trap Niggas. And Big Duke feels kind of more like the Waka Flocka Flame kind of low key kind of hood dude, and then Big Gee is the louder kind of more like Gorilla Zoe type hood dude. So that is kind of the atmosphere with that sort of thing. But Jeezy was kind of the breakout star, and he had a number of songs on here that I think were basically just like secret Jeezy songs, just because he was on the verge of becoming like the next hip hop star. And Dem Boys is an example of that. It's probably the best song on this album, but unfortunately for the promotion, it was the only real single that ever charted. Now, I think part of the reason why was because the second single was Felonies, and that's basically one of the best songs on here, but I think the topic is probably what spooked people out of wanting to kind of promote this group. I mean, they're called Boys in the Hood, which is an NWA song, and basically lets you know right from the get-go that that's what they're about. And I can't imagine. I mean, Dem Boys was obviously the most commercial song on here. It even has Puff Daddy, but they should have, if they wanted to sell more copies, they probably should have invested in like a different kind of topic to have went with. I think Felonies was maybe too rash, but I would have said like Gangstas would have been a sufficient second single. I mean, that has a posthumous verse from Eazy-e, and he probably would have done a song with them had he lived to the point where they came out. But I feel like that was more approachable. I still think maybe that's a tad bit too. I mean, they weren't really trying to be commercial, but I still think in terms of like radio spins across like the country and throughout the suburbs and that sort of stuff. I mean, that had like a light tint. That was probably more presentable, but I don't really think they had any other songs on this project that could have been a sufficient second single beyond Dem Boys. So basically, what you're getting this for is probably just the single, and then you have to just be a fan of hardcore Southern rap, which is basically the prospect of what went along with that. And it's decent. I mean, this album is not star-studded. I mean, it has some good points, but it also has some missed opportunities that we'll talk about. It shows kind of some of the moments. Like I really was interested. I found this album to be interesting just based upon the song "Dem Boys," Jeezy's extra personality that he covered, basically helping this, helping out with promotion, but it did not have like the full blown punch. I mean, some of these songs I remember and they were fun, but it was not it's just not even intended to be a whole album. So we'll talk about some of these. I guess we can just kind of get into this. It's going to be kind of a shorter review, but we'll still kind of get into it. So out of 16 songs, I only wound up liking 6, so I'll list those for you. Dem Boys, Felonies, Gangstas with Eazy-e, Still Slizzard, Trap Niggas, and Bitches in Business, which has Rick Ross on there. So Trap Niggas has Jeezy and Jody Breeze, and that one has one of the best beats on here. And Gangsta's has one of the most club sounding beats. I mean, Eazy-E obviously could not do like a real verse for them, but it works for what it is. Jeezy has a nice verse that they all do, and that's I still think that's probably like the second best song on here is Gangsta's, and Still Slizzard was a very clever song just because it was kind of like a song dedicated to the day after a big night, some sort of shindig or something. You're drunk, hungover, torched, whatever, and you're kind of just. I liked it. I mean, hangover songs, those don't really come up too much. You see plenty of Taking Shots. Lil Jon covers like shot songs. LMFAO did that. But they never had like the day after when you're like completely fucking hungover or something. And these guys at least did that. So I found that clever. Jeezy's not, he doesn't drop a verse on the song, but he kind of does like background vocals and you hear him talk. So it was interesting. But yeah, I mean, there just were some missed opportunities. Like, I felt like Look had a decent beat, but I could not, it was just, it felt rather bland compared to Gangsta's, and Trap Niggas was just basically about the concept of talking about drug dealing. But you kind of look at it, I would have liked for them to just kind of done just like a regular verse because that had a really outstanding beat. If they just would have had like one verse each rather than trying to explain like a young buck to like a seasoned vet and that sort of thing, I probably would have said that that would have been like top three, top five of the songs on here. But I mean, it basically is top five, but um, I didn't like the approach for how the song worked. And any song after Still Slizzard was just bunk. I mean, there's a lot of bunk on this project that basically just sounds like a very independent kind of record. Like it doesn't really have much profession being on an actual album. A lot of this was so off the wall, not off the wall, but just half baked. Really did not feel like it had the official type feel to it. It was not quality like what should have come out of Bad Boy. So the first half of the album has a good handful of hits, but anything after like song 10 is not terrific. And then also, I was kind of disappointed in the intro and the interlude. Those were kind of, I'm starting to like intros and that sort of stuff more, but the production on those were just not good. I mean, I really, Jeezy typically does have good ear for beats. I don't know what happened as to why they wouldn't have had something like more enticing or something like a song like Felonies or Gangstas they could have put for intro and the interlude to kind of give some more personality. But for the most part, I think professionally you have to look at this as just like a stopgap release for a Jeezy album with some of his homies on there and that sort of thing because none of these guys really got much further. They're not bad rappers, but the taste for it, they don't have like they do have memorable verses, but it never breaks out to the point where you think, okay, they're going to be on other songs. Like they haven't really gotten too many features outside of like this album, so it's interesting, but it's kind of very exclusive. It's not to the point where you would think to hear them outside of this record. So that's kind of the thing. I mean, eventually these songs would get picked up, but it's very much like pulling teeth trying to find good records on this album. That's kind of the thing. They struggle with trying to get hits, in other words. That's kind of the thing. So I do think in terms of mixtapes, that sort of stuff, they probably would have had a good handful. But even in like a 20 song mixtape, you probably would have only liked like three or four, maybe five songs at most. That's kind of the thing. So obviously paying $18 for this is out of the question in terms of what I would do, but it's a 15-year-old album, so you get it like that. But so I'm gonna give this album basically like a 3.5 out of 10 because me liking 6 songs out of 16 is way too many. I mean that's basically like a little less than half, but I don't feel like a 4 is quite good enough. So 3.5 out of 10, just because Dem Boys, Felonies, and Gangstas are like the three main songs to go for, but one of those is basically hardcore rap only, and then two of those barely make the cut in terms of just like passable to in today's age kind of rap music. So basically the thing. Dem Boys is easily the best song, but they just needed more songs like that. And I think they didn't want to sell out, but the problem with it is having the creativity to do more songs like that without selling out. That's kind of the problem that we just don't get to. So the Social Score gets a 3 out of 10 just because Dem Boys was a good song and that was really a stellar song that kind of showcased them, but they just didn't have anything else left in the tank after that. And Felonies, like I said, I don't know. I don't even know if they made a music video for it and what happened, but I mean, it works for, like, I suppose, depending upon like rougher atmospheres, it's probably like a decent song, and it is a good song, but I don't know how many radio stations and places like that would have picked the song up to get them promoted more. So 3 out of 10. And I mean, once again, I do enjoy Jeezy, so it's fun to kind of mess with some of those records and such, but there's just not an abundance to talk about beyond like one or two and maybe three songs at most. So